welcome back to the Mannix Library. I'm your librarian, and today we're going to be talking about some fairy tale retellings. Fall is in full swing here at the library, so we are bundling. Not to be confused with the courting custom of bundling that started in pre-Celtic British Isles or the Netherlands, depending on the source. Some sources even say it dated all the way back to biblical times. But it is a tradition where an unwed couple would be bundled together in the same bed. Typically they were clothed, and a piece of wood was placed between them. It was eventually picked up by colonial America, specifically the Pennsylvania Dutch country, but it is now mostly associated with the Amish and one of their courting customs. If you want more information on the courting customs, I would go to Jay's store. There are a few articles specifically on bundling. Some of those articles I will list down below, but I would specifically look out for The Harassed History of Bundling by S.M. Ludnick, and also Courtship and Sexual Freedom in 18th Century America by Richard Godbeer. Also, there is a brief mention of bundling in the second book in the All Souls series by Deborah Harkness. Also associated with that would be the TV show The Discovery of Witches. I believe it is season 1, episode 5 that it is briefly mentioned, and specifically what bundling isn't. But yeah, you can go check that out. Again, will be linked in the description below. But that's not the kind of bundling that we're talking about today. We are talking about bundling up. So grab your favorite jumper, a nice cup of warm tea, and let's get into it. So, a lot like other people that are trying to start a library, I have a bit of a book buying problem. Don't really believe in like book buying bans because sometimes they just don't work, or you feel really guilty about like breaking your ban, and that's just not what I typically enjoy. So I gave myself a challenge instead, because I have so many books and so many people in my life have asked me, have you read all the books on your shelf? And the answer is always no, not at all. I decided that I have to read 2 books on my shelf before I can get a new book for the library. And so today I'm going to be showing you some of the books that I read and talking a little bit about them, and then the book that I got as a reward for it. So here we go. So I read both Tasting Red and Chasing Goldie by Holly Roberds. They are both fairy tale retellings, and I did quite enjoy them. There were a few issues here and there. A lot of the issues that I had were just like very simple editing issues that when she gets picked up by like a traditional publisher, which I'm sure she will because her books are a little bit addicting, those will be ironed out. So I'm not even worried about it. But let's start. So Tasting Red is a Little Red Riding Hood retelling. Red is the non-magical granddaughter of the very magical witch grandma, who everyone knows, even in the human world, because of her baked good company. She puts a little bit of magic into the baked goods, and so she's very, very wealthy and very well known. But Red is just trying to hide in the human world, basically. She goes to visit her grandma at her grandma's request. Grandma's not there. Instead, we meet Brexley. Brexley is a assassin who is also a werewolf and is there to kill Grandma, but couldn't find Grandma, found Red instead. And they kind of hit it off right away. Like, right away. And so Brexley just thinks that, hey, I better stick with Red so that I can find Grandma. but Red's past is kind of catching up with her, and even the big bad wolf isn't quite enough to stop what's coming for her. Chasing Goldie is a Goldilocks and the Three Bears retelling. So Goldie is a plus-sized Barbie, basically, but like a little bit slutty. And she inherits a house from her aunt who has recently passed, and the house is in disarray. And so she's taken it upon herself to fix it up. But she's got a real grumpy neighbor named Ted, and he is a werebear. And not only is he just raining on her sunshine parade, he's also stomping on her heart-shaped cakes. But through a series of slight miscommunications and Goldie waking up in Ted's bed, them not knowing how it happened, they get together and it's really lovely. And they can't seem to stay away from each other. The issue is that there are a lot of scary people who also can't seem to stay away from Goldie. So yeah, they are very good, but let's get into like my full thoughts and some spoilers about them, shall we? All right. All right, so tasting Red. So let's start with, I really liked it. I gave it 4 stars, 4 out of 5 stars. I think it's a very good representation of like a spicy Little Red Riding Hood retelling. Obviously aged up. Little Red is in college. She's a little bit older because she like transferred in from a magic school that she failed out of, which, by the real quick, she has no magic and she's been going to magic school her whole life, and they're just like, you'll get it eventually. It doesn't make any sense, and the magic school itself really doesn't make sense, but we'll get to that later. I really liked Red. I thought she was a lot of fun. She has like fire truck red hair, and she says that it's natural, but everyone assumes that it's dyed, but she got it genetically from her mom, who is no longer like alive. That took me right out of the story. I'm not even gonna lie, because that is not a natural color, and she has admitted that it is not like a color that is typically naturally occurring in the world that we're in, and then it's not even explained by like magic. They didn't magic it into that being red, and so therefore in my head there's no possible way for her hair to be this red naturally, and it just took me out of it. Like if they had just explained it by magic, like, oh yeah, the magic in our blood makes our hair this somewhat unnatural shade of red, I would have been like, cool, explained, moving on. But it wasn't, and it's just a little bit irritating to me. I'm like, no, you need to explain it and then I can move on. Otherwise, this girl is just saying that her very clearly dyed hair is natural for attention, and it feels a little pick-me. But that's like, that was my main gripe with Red. Everything else was pretty great about her. Brexley, the werewolf, the big bad wolf, I kind of had an issue with, in that he was so like cardboard cutout of like bad boy assassin love interest, and like I could have like yanked him out and put in literally a wolf, and it would have been basically exactly the same except for the sex scenes. And the sex scenes were really well done. I liked them quite a bit, but his general character just felt so flat that I wasn't emotionally invested in the relationship. But still cute guy. The first time they meet, they have sex. Like the first time they meet. And it's because like Red's starting to go into heat because she is, spoiler alert, half werewolf. And so she's starting to go into heat. And okay, I've read so many ABO fan fictions. I love the idea of like wolves and mates and alpha, beta, omega. Like, I have been in the AO3 trenches. I've been in the fanfiction.net trenches. I've unfortunately read a lot of Wattpad. Like, that's my background. I understand where we're coming from. The way that mating is explained in here and heats, it feels like someone knows ABO and is like, I need to water this down for the masses as much as possible. And while I think it can be done, I think it was like really well done in Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I just don't think that it transferred well in Tasting Red. But anyway, Red's in heat and they meet and they fuck immediately. And it's like, oh, wow. Just caught off guard there, but let's go for it. What took me out of that scene is Brexley doesn't wear underwear. Like, he's wearing jeans, no underwear. And I'm like, that's gotta be uncomfortable. Red's like, that's the hottest thing I've ever seen. And at least someone's into it. Like, we don't yuck yums here at the Mannix Library, but gosh, sometimes we want to. But, you know, whatever. They have a grand old time. She slaps him. They both weirdly like it. Like, they think it's weird that they like it. I'm not saying that it's weird that they like it. You do you, fam. But, like, neither of them had ever done that before and hadn't discussed it prior. And she just fully slaps them. And then they pause and they take a second. And they're like, we both like that. And then continue. And Red gets attacked by an ice mage so fast. Like, she had just finished. I don't think Brexley had finished. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think Brexley had finished, but she definitely did. But he literally pulls out of her to fight this mage naked, basically at half-mast at this point. And it's like, I mean, yeah, go for it. A little bit hot, to be perfectly honest. Like, being irritated that you have to start fighting someone in the middle of having sex because the sex was so good that you didn't want to stop to have to fight for your life. Yeah, I'm into it. Let's go. And then, like, he becomes her bodyguard. But he's pretending to be her bodyguard because he's like, oh, she'll lead me to Grandma, who Red calls Gigi, which I think is the cutest grandma name, by the way. Everyone should call their grandma Gigi for the rest of time because it just feels nice and lovely, and grandma or grandmother they make her feel old, and Gigi just makes her feel like a little bit more of a mom figure, which is what like Gigi was to Red anyway. So I really liked that part. But Red doesn't know where Gigi is. She's like, I don't know where Gigi is. She's not picking up her phone. She's not answering. I was supposed to meet her this weekend. She's not here. Like, I don't know. Do you know, bodyguard, that you said that my Gigi hired you to watch over me? Do you know where she is? And he's like, no. So everyone's in the dark as to where Gigi is. But the ice mage had come to attack Red because they're like, oh, you have this secret recipe. And she's like, the fuck I do, bro. Also, basically naked, ugly bra. She's wearing her ugly bra. We all have an ugly bra. And it's like, if anyone caught me in that, I'd just die of embarrassment a little bit. But that ensues. They go back to her place, which is awful. Don't live there. But they go back to her place. He's sleeping on the couch. She has 2 pet bunnies named Bangs and Bombs, which I feel like is a reference to something that I don't get. So if you know what it is, let me know. But they're cute. I love bunnies. But there was like a whole back and forth between Brexley and basically the bunnies and himself being like, oh, the big bad wolf watching over bunnies. It's like, yeah, I get it, wolves eat bunnies. But they kind of like kept hitting at it. It's like, yep, I get it. Wolves eat bunnies and this is weird. But whatever. But Red works at a bar called the Poison Apple, and she works with the other Lost Girls, which are Cinder and Goldie. And it's like Coyote Ugly meets a strip club, meets a burlesque club, meets like the most alt girls you know, all being hot in a bar at the same time. Like, it was a lot of fun, and I really, really enjoyed those scenes. I really liked watching like Red be really confident and really sexy, and like she's in her element here. The outfit seemed not right for a bartender. Like, I kind of get it because we are going for like a little bit of a coyote ugly thing, but bars get messy, and you're from the description, they are moving around so much, they're lifting so much. If you're wearing tight leather skinny pants and a corset top, yes, hot, go for it. I love that look. It seems restrictive. It seems like it's gonna get dirty really easily. Those are like, correct me if I'm wrong. Show me a place where this actually happens so that I can go there and like watch them work so that I can see what's going on here. But it seems like it would be really not fun to work in, not even gonna lie. Like, looks hot, not practical. But then there's like a slight fake dating trope in there, which was thrown in, which I don't think needed to be there. It could have been a super cute, like, bodyguard, princess-y, like, heiress type trope. I would have dug it. I would have really, like, if we had dove into that. But no, Red wants to keep her secret from her friends about who she really is, which is fine, boring, fine. You can do what you want with your life, girl. I wouldn't, but you can. But she keeps getting attacked, and people keep coming for her, and they're asking for the recipe, and she's like, I don't have jack shit, bro. But then we eventually meet the scariest ever. We meet Hansel and Gretel, which they're clearly in a relationship. Like, these twins are clearly like Cersei and Jamie. But they have an actually really interesting power that I really liked because it does kind of go in and explain the positives and the negatives about it. So Hansel has hunger and Gretel has thirst. So they control like those biological impulses, but also the actual biology of it in the body. So like, no, Gretel is hunger and Hansel is thirst. Yes, that's it. Sorry, I got my wires crossed a little bit. They're the exact same people. They're just fucking each other. Anyway, like, Gretel can take all of the food out of your body and make you feel like you're starving to death and start like withering away. And Hansel can take like all of the water out of your body and make you feel like you're literally so dehydrated that you're going to die of thirst. And you kind of are. Like, Red has a habit of licking her lips because they were bullies in school for her, and they used to torture her in school, which should not be allowed. They used to literally torture her in school, so much that her lips were so dry that she had a habit of licking them a lot. There was also like a scene that was mentioned where Gretel, like, basically stopped the impulse of hunger in Red's body. So she never ate, like, thought of food was a little bit repulsive, and she lost so much weight. Like, that's a terrifying thing. But then there are also positives to it, like diet. Like, Gretel could add food to a body, and so it helps malnourished people. Like, there are a lot of really, really positive things to these powers, but also super negative things to these powers. And I think it makes them actually kind of really scary villains. There wasn't a clear motive. They were like, we are bad guys, but I thought that their power was really fascinating, and I really liked that. But like, eventually we find out what the secret recipe was. Grandma is making goodies with magic in it that will unlock magical abilities already in someone's like genetics, but that they are not manifesting. So it's basically to help Red, but she's like, I can also make money off of this. But the FDA doesn't approve it because apparently the FDA is still a thing in this magical world. Who knew? But yeah, Red gets her powers, and like we find out that Red is half werewolf. A lot of fun. I love a good Little Red Riding Hood also being a werewolf stories. Those are so fun. But werewolves in this world can like neutralize a mage's powers just by being within a few feet of them. Cool ability. But when Red gets like her magic from her grandma's special cookies, it interacts with like the werewolfness of it, and it manifests into a power that she can like permanently take away another mage's power, which I thought was actually so cool. I really enjoyed that part. But then there was like the twist ending where the dude that hired Brexley to kill Grandma is actually Red's dad, and he didn't know that Red existed. He just thought that Grandma was keeping the love of his life away from him, and so he wants to kill Grandma over it. And it's like, there wasn't enough. There was like enough in it that the twist made sense, but it didn't feel believable, if that makes sense. Like, I didn't feel it with my chest. I'm like, oh, this is just this plot point, a little bit boring, a little bit like overdone, not my favorite. But overall, I really liked it. Like, again, 4 out of 10, would recommend. Now, Chasing Goldie, I gave this a 3 out of 5. Mainly, this one had more editing issues than Tasting Red. Like, there was a whole chapter that felt like it was in the wrong place. But otherwise, I thought it was good. There are a few things that weren't my favorite, but, 3 out of 5. Like, I would still recommend it. I will say any book that I show you will not have lower than a 3, because any book that I'm like, this is good enough to finish, automatically gets a 3 stars for me. So, but Goldie is like, they describe her as plus size Barbie. While I think it's really, really important to have like that kind of representation, especially in spicy romance novels, they made it so much of her personality that she was plus size that it felt pandering. But I loved how like this was a grumpy sunshine romance, and Goldie, the epitome of sunshine. She baked so many heart-shaped cakes, it was a little bit ridiculous. She also constantly, she also constantly said that she was broke, trying to like repair this house that her aunt left her that was basically a mansion with like, they also said that her aunt sometimes lived there, didn't live there like year round, sometimes would go on like 8-month trips, but this house was so gross, it felt like no one had lived there in 10 years. I don't know how that maths, but fine, whatever. But she's constantly saying how broke she is trying to fix up this house, so she's eating oats that were meant for horses every single day for every meal. She's eating porridge for every meal, but yet she still has the money to buy all the ingredients to bake all these cakes to send to her grumpy neighbor. That doesn't really make sense. But Ted is absolutely hilarious. The minute they said that his name was Ted, my first thought, teddy bear, obviously, because he's a werebear, which is so fun. I love it so much. But he is instantly attracted to her, which I love a guy who's just like instantly down. But he's also so grumpy, and he's like, I don't need any woman coming and disturbing my peace, but gosh, she's pretty to look at. And I'm just like, dude, you're into her, just go talk to her. Like, it doesn't have to be serious if you don't want to make it serious. But then of course they are mates, so that's a whole thing. But then Goldie's life kind of takes like this weird turn where she's getting a lot more male attention than she typically does. Like a lot more. She's like, this is weird. Why is this happening? Like, she's sworn off dudes. She thinks that she jumps too far into relationships, so she's like, I need to cool down. I need to pump the brakes on guys. And right when she does it, all of the guys start flocking to her, and she's like, this is Weird. Maybe I have like a sign above my head that says I'm available and not interested, and that's catnip apparently. But, you know, whatever. But her neighbor doesn't seem to be affected, and so she's a little bit drawn to the neighbor. Obviously, who wouldn't like this beautiful woman? Oh my god, she's trying to make the best out of this situation. She has such a hard time setting boundaries that it gets a little bit much because she's so nice to these guys. And like, yeah, we all know the like, you'd be nice because you don't know if they're going to murder you thing. But at a certain point, especially in like my fantasy retellings, I'm like, hey, maybe don't add how awful and scary men can be. Like, yeah, add a few of those. Don't make it like the main focus of this, because the main focus is she doesn't feel comfortable saying no to people because she doesn't want to hurt their feelings. And maybe she is just being like people pleasery, and that's fine. But the way that I read it as like, yeah, this is people pleasery, but also there's the underlying threat of men. And I don't like the underlying threat of men in my books. I'm fine with like some men are bad and these are villains. That's fine. But I hate being reminded that like we live in a world that is not fun all the time. And I read to live in worlds that are fun all the time. So but anyway, that's weirdness starts happening. And then also a weird thing that starts happening is she starts waking up in beds that aren't hers. She just wakes up, and first she wakes up in two beds. One of them is too soft, one of them is too hard. They are both in Ted's house. Like, Ted has a pretty big house because he has two brothers that I keep forgetting about because they are so dumb and inconsequential. Two brothers that don't live there full time, but she keeps waking up in like their beds, and then eventually she wakes up in Ted's bed, and that is when they have sex for the first time. And I'm like, gorgeous. Yes, this sexual tension was building for so long, and the sex scenes were so fun because he's very much like, hey, you don't need to be performative. I need you to enjoy this because that's how I'm going to enjoy this. And it's like, yeah, we love that so much. The dialogue got like a little funky in the sex scene sometimes. Like she was really trying to push home the just right thing into like sexual scenes, and it just felt forced and awkward. But otherwise, I thought the sex scenes were so fun and so sexy, like so sexy. Eventually you find out Goldie is a siren. She ate some of Red's grandma's magic cookies and started manifesting her magical abilities, and them being she's a siren, so men are going to be drawn to her in like kind of a psycho way. Like, a dude fully proposes to her the day after he met her with a giant pink diamond. And honestly, if I were her, I would have taken it, but that is neither here nor there. Like, I wouldn't have said yes, but I would have kept the rock. But like, it gets absolutely insane how these men are acting. One of them comes to her house, like one of them fully follows her home, and then she's also realizing stuff around her house is moving, and like she looks back and she's like, oh yeah, that lingerie was laid out on my bed, but I thought I did that. Like, no, you didn't. That's a crazy thing. You should have mentioned that so earlier. But she realizes that she has a stalker, and Ted's family is weird, and like his brother is in gambling debts, and like they come to collect, but they see Goldie and they're instantly in love with her, and they start like kind of stalking her, and it gets like really intense, and she's in danger all the time, and it's like, she can move. But they're trying to figure out this whole siren thing and how basically like she could turn it off if she wants to. She does eventually be able to. What I really like about this book specifically was the twist ending. Like, I love a good twist. I don't think every book necessarily needs a twist, but I really loved the twist in this which was Cinder's, like, boyfriend was her stalker. I honestly thought it was Goldie's ex-boyfriend who was her stalker. I'm like, oh, that's where this is going. No, it was Cinder's boyfriend, who we see, like, throughout the book. And I never would have suspected him. But then, like, as he was kidnapping her and, like, talking about her and, like, doing the evil plan monologue thing, it's like, this really makes sense. Like, you laid down the groundwork for this. This is super believable. I love all of this. But then, like, it was a little bit ruined by the cure for everything. She figured out that if she just set hard boundaries and, like, meant them, that men would leave her alone. It's like, oh, okay, I guess. Like, I'll buy into it, because it does feel like full character arc from, like, a people pleaser to someone who is able to set hard boundaries. But it also felt a little bit like, oh, that was way too easy. Way too easy. But, you know, otherwise, good ending. I liked this story. I did not feel like it was a true Goldilocks and the Three Bears retelling, because we only see him turn into a bear, like, twice. And I forget that he has brothers, because they don't live together, and, like, he's just mad at his brothers all the time anyway. And Goldilocks is accidentally breaking into their house, and the porch thing was weird. Like, I thought it was a great story. I didn't think it was a great retelling. But otherwise, yeah. Would recommend. And then let's talk about the book that I bought. All right, the book that I bought was Born of Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. It is the last book in the Flesh of Fire series. So that's the prequel series to the From Blood and Ash series. And so this is about Sarah and Nyktos. It's so good. I love those series. I think that they are so fun and sexy and heartwarming, and, like, I got into this series, like, fully. And so when this came out, I was so excited, and I waited, and then I got it, and now I get to catalog it, put it in my computer, put it on my shelf, and then eventually, hopefully, read it. I do need to reread some of the Flesh and Fire books, because there are some things that I did not really get into that I really want to. But I love Sarah. I think she is a really fun protagonist. Honestly, I think I like the Flesh and Fire series better than the From Blood and Ash series. Honestly, I don't think anyone can top Poppy and Castile for me, because, spoilers, if you haven't read it, she does stab him in the heart and then they in the snow, and I'm like, I'm there for it. But Sarah and Nyktos, I mean, Nyktos is a full shadow daddy, and I always there for that, always. But it just, they're gods. Spoiler alert, they're gods, and I love that so much for them. But yeah, and also, spoiler alert, they're dragon shifters, and there's, like, it makes the From Blood and Ash world also so much bigger, and this series is so big and lovely, and it feels dense in a way that feels like we're authentically building this world, instead of I just have a lot of things to say. It feels a lot like when I was reading Throne of Glass for the first time, and I eventually got to Heir of Fire, and I'm like, oh, the world is so much bigger than I thought it was. Like, that is what reading the Flesh and Fire series felt like for Blood and Ash. So yeah, I'm very excited to dive into this. So yay me. 10 out of 10 would recommend. Like, fully. I gave the From Blood and Ash series 5 stars, and I have given the Flesh and Blood series 5 stars. Flesh and Fire is now complete with that book. From Blood and Ash is not quite complete. I think there is one more book coming out in that series, but very excited. Very, very excited. But yeah, 5 stars thus far. Anyway, thank you for visiting the library today. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. I have tagged a bunch of stuff down in the description, so the articles on bundling will be down there on JSTOR. Please look into JSTOR. You can get like free full access if you're at any college right now. But if you're not at a college or a university and you don't have like a college or a university email, you can still have access to JSTOR and articles. I think a free account, you have access to 100 articles a month. So it's a really great resource for a lot of things, but those articles are tagged below. I will also like put in links for Tasting Red and Chasing Goldie, as well as Born of Blood and Ash. So please check those out, and thank you for watching, and thank you for visiting the library. See you guys later.